Hey guys, Alvaro here. I've been thinking about making this video for a while, and now that the Casual League has ended, I've been wanting to make a deck guide for the late game Undead deck that I play. I'm not sure if anyone else is really running it, and I know for sure that there isn't a tutorial really on it, so it seemed like a good time to do it. Really quick shout out to Blinky, because I'm going to be using his format pretty much line for line in this tutorial. So if you're not following, or if you're not subscribed to him already, do that. He's got like 10 videos just for the current meta, and he's really good at scrolls and much better deck builder than me. So with that out of the way, here goes. I've been playing this deck for a while, and it kind of started when Sleep Moratorium came out, so that's kind of where the focus of the deck is. It's around making big plays with Sleep Moratorium and Restless Bones, Necrogeddon, that kind of thing. The closest comparison I would say as far as speed of the deck, I would say it's a slightly slower range energy actually. So you have similar staying power. I think your late game is, your card draw is, I think, slightly better, but your ability to deal your damage to resources ratio is way worse. So I can't just wipe a lane when I have 6 resources anywhere near as easily as you can with ranged energy. With that being said, I'm going to go through each category kind of and just explain why I include what creatures or spells or whatever and go through it that way. So here are the explosive cards in the deck. So the easy one to understand is Blightseed, play it turn 3 or 4, and the next turn you can make a big play. The next one is Sleep Moratorium, which is what these next 2 cards are for. You're going to want to use the Sleep Moratorium to get a Necro or a Nuru out and do something big. So that's why we run 3 Nurus, not 2, because even though it's a unique, half the time we get a Nuru, we just want her for her resources, and we aren't even going to play her. So having her discarded in the graveyard is fine in how this deck is designed. And, I mean, it's a decay deck that has some late game properties. So you're going to run Necro, and we might as well run 3 for the Sleep Moratorium. Here we have the creatures. First up is Infested Husk. Undead, so good synergy, and it's got guaranteed value when it dies. It's one of the best 2-drops that decay has, I think. But it does have some stiff competition, but in this case you've got synergy. Next up, we have Slayer Vestige, which is good in the early game and good in the late game. It always has a chance to punch way above its weight, and its stat line is solid. Even if it didn't have Slayer, it would be, well, still bad, but it'd be okay. Next up is Harvester, which you kind of have to include in this deck. It can wipe a lane, it works with Restless Bones, you can proc Irva 10,000 times with it, and it's a really good card to come back with too if you just start placing crap in front of it, and eventually you can get it to go off. And it's 4 health for 3 resources and sometimes might attack. So your opponent's going to be working their butt off to kill that thing, and it's a really good threat. Next up we have Pack Husk, which just like the Infested Husk is guaranteed value and 4 health. Well, not unlike the Infested Husk, it's got 4 health, but the guaranteed value part is shared. Strong card, not much to say about it. And Oblivion Seeker, which is the only non-undead card in this deck, but it's draw 2. Fits nicely in this deck. This deck, we kind of had a weak spot around 5 resources before I included it, and it really helps the deck sort of last into the late game because it's good card draw. Next up, we've got the Undead Cards. These are the cards that really the deck's using to try to build up some synergy to make big plays. So Shroud of Unlife, which is not a card you see much, is kind of designed to be able to be played on humans. So 2 cards that it really shines when you play it on are a Flesh Animator, because it turns a Restless Bones into a God Hand, because the Flesh Animator will count down and just count all your undead creatures down 2, which is a big deal because that means instead of only the ones that are at 1 countdown attacking, they all count down. So really, really powerful combination there. And on Nuru, because if you can throw out two attacking husks from nowhere, that's really good. Restless Bones, for the reason that about half, maybe 2/3 of the creatures in this deck are undead, and all of your grunts are undead. Everything small is going to be an undead creature. Anima Conduit, because again, you're focusing on undead synergy. You can get those harvesters to go off. You can get Irva to proc, and they can work nicely with Restless Bones too. Decay generally just likes your stuff dying, so it's a good card to have here. Flesh Animator, again, just undead synergy. It counts everything down, or most things down. So it's a solid card. It's a good 4-drop with fine stats. Next up, we've got Irva. Really huge rock star in this deck when you can play her. A lot of the times I find myself sacrificing her for Oblivion Seekers, but when she's useful, she pretty much wipes a lane. So you can either use her as a little ping with just a Restless Bones of 1 or 2 creatures attacking. You're not looking for as much explosive power as you are with more of an aggro Undead Decay deck. But other times, for instance, you can Necrogeddon and then play her if you make a big play with that. And she just will destroy things. So really solid card there. And then Nuru, just like you saw earlier, in addition to costing 8 resources, which is great for our sleep moratoriums, she buffs all your undeads, she spawns undeads and makes things die, so I think she's a good fit for this deck. Now it's on to the removal. So, first thing we got is Languid. It's a good card. Everyone runs it in Decay, really. Guaranteed cantrip, and it's an enchantment, so you can proc Unbind off of it. Not too much to say there. Next up is Brain Lice, which is a solid card. Kills something eventually. You might notice I'm only running 2 of it. That's because I don't have Curse Mongers in this deck. So the only real way to get value out of it quickly is Unbind. It's still nice to have. I find myself sacrificing them a lot, but you can play one in the early game and get something off of it. And the drawing a card with Unbind is always nice, because that way it only costs you 1 card from your hand instead of 2. But not the most useful card in this deck, but still a solid pick, and it's always nice to have a little bit more removal. Next up is Soulsteel, which is a great early game card. You can kill something and come back against Tempo Order, for example. If they end up playing turn 2 Aging Knight, you can swap out for it. There's 1,000 things with 2 health that it kills and gives you some tempo back. And the Mire Shambler being undead is just some icing on the cake. Next up, we've got Unbind, which is probably the removal that I use the most, or at least that I notice that I use the most. It works nicely with Brain Lice. It also works pretty nicely with Shroud of Unlife, which I didn't mention here, but you can still play Shroud of Unlife on other people's stuff. And importantly, Languid can be played on structures. So you can Languid Unbind structures, which is really good as Decay, because most of the time you'll find structures to be a giant pain in your ass. And last up, we've got Damning Curse, which is just solid removal. Not much to say there. Last up, we've got the Cyborg. These are cards that you could run, that I don't run right now, but they're definitely worth considering, and I think they could very well find a home in this deck. First up is Loyal Darkling. It's a classic Decay card. You can deal some good damage with it to help finish people off with Necrogeddon. It's a 2-drop, and there's already a lot of 2-drops in this deck, so I don't really think it fits that well. And this deck, the one thing it's definitely not short on is damage. So if you can kill someone, you shouldn't really need the Darkling for that. If you start finding that you're just getting out-resourced, out-valued by other late-game decks, I think it's worth considering, but I don't think it'll be that great against more aggressive or mid-range decks. Next up, we've got Sanctuary of the Lost, which is much more useful in the aggro variant of this deck, I think, because you're trying to really fill up the board with that one. With this deck, most of your value is coming from the humans, and you just need a few undeads to really make good value out of it, so it's not really great, and it costs a decent amount of tempo to play. I could definitely see it being worth running, especially if there's a little more energy in the meta, but even now, it's not bad. It can weaken Quakes and really hurt late game growth, which is popular right now. So it's worth considering, especially if you're running it in a tournament and you know what people are going to be running. Next up is Rotator, which is a really good card. I think if you're running into a lot of aggro growth, it could be super, super valuable. But that 3 health is hard to justify when I have Harvesters and Pack Husks. And generally on turn 3, I'm trying to make sure I have a board. And in the late game, it gets burnt a lot. So if you're against growth, it's definitely worth running, but it's got some really stiff competition with Harvester, Pack Husk, and Blightseed. Next up is a card you don't see as much, Corpus Collector, which has the obvious weakness of 3 health, but it does summon Husks. I think it could be worth looking into. It could fit the theme of the deck, and the deck does lack really good 4-drops that synergize well. I mentioned I don't run Cursemonger, which you could argue for running, but I don't think it works that nicely with the rest of the deck, so I'm leaving this as an option, but I don't run it because it's still 3 health for 4 resources, and it's not any kind of guaranteed value. Next up, we've got Halls. This is really good value in the late game. Keep on drawing, but it is only a draw 3 for 6 resources. It's a really good draw 3 because you get to choose them all, and it's coming from the graveyard, which is nice for this deck. But at the end of the day, it does cost an entire turn, and a lot of times with this thing, you're trying just to finish them off. So you're going to be wanting to make big explosive plays or set up big explosive plays. But I found that I tend to not value it very highly, so I don't play it myself. That being said, I could easily see someone running this in the deck. Last up, we have Reaping Mask, which is something that I only just considered running as of making this video. I was thinking of the sideboard and I threw this in. Cost 7, so it could play really nice with your Sleep Moratorium. And in addition to that, it could fill a role similar to what Loyal Darkling would, to just act as a finishing card with a Necrogeddon the next turn, or you can just buff your units. +3/+3 in it. It's a guaranteed cantrip, but 7 resources for a cantrip obviously isn't the greatest. Still, it's a strong card, and it's a decent card, and it's worth thinking about. So, with all of that out of the way, let's hop into a game. So, here is the game. I managed to find Foliage online for a match, so we're going to play now. So I can see a pretty decent curve in this hand. I have 1, 2, 3, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so I think it's solid. I'll probably just get rid of the Irva. The other option would be getting rid of an Infested Husk, because there's a lot of 2 and 3 drops in this deck, so I think I'm actually going to go with that. And we'll see what Foliage does here. Just sent me a challenge, so I was going to try to dub over an older game of mine, but it seemed like a better option to play with him. So he's playing Growth, which I would definitely say is a weaker matchup for this deck. A big chunk of that reason would be just because I don't run Rot Eaters, which are definitely reasonable to include in this deck. So he's doing a lot of passing. He's playing decay Growth, which means that I probably should start going for more explosive plays. I know that's kind of, I said that was the point of the deck earlier, but he's probably playing a Samata deck, and I need to take out those idols. So let's ditch the Harvester, because he'll be able to kill that thing easy. And play that Pack Husk and get rolling. So right now you're not seeing a lot of the explosive stuff the deck can do, which you can play the early game fairly greedily, and if you get a good draw, you can kind of just win sometimes, or at the very least have a really, really nice transition to the middle game. I don't want to play Anima Conduits in this matchup at all, because he probably is running the Road, which is good and will ramp him, and I don't want to give him free ramp. He's going to have to play his own structures for that. So right now everything's going to give me some value if it dies at least, but I don't like how I'm laid out in a way that really says, hey, play Return to Nature on me. So I'll just play another Oblivion Seeker, and I'm going to try to set my board up in a way that doesn't say, hey, play Return to Nature on me. But that might take a little bit of time, especially since I still want to control the center idols. It's also important to note that he's probably going to do a lot of killing his own creatures. The deck is basically made of mass removal, so I can almost just completely ignore what he does and just go for idols. If this thing starts becoming a problem, I can take care of it, but I don't think it will. Yeah, see. And another useful thing is going to be to ping every idol once. Play this, and we'll just threaten a Necrogeddon next turn. I mean, I'll win next turn if he doesn't do anything to stop it, or at the very least he'll be in a unhappy place. Probably would have been smarter to have the Oblivion Seeker attack up top, because then everything would have been at 6, so that would have been threatening lethal. Now I'm not, but I still think that Necrogeddon would be a really good play, because I will draw 6 cards, which is good. But he won't let me. So I think Necrogeddon this turn is a really good call. And I haven't really sacrificed anything that great for Sleep Moratorium. But I think we should just do that. And Necrogeddon. And we've got a great hand here, so he's probably going to Quake, and it's going to be a fight to get those last few finished up, but that's okay. How many poisons? That has 2 poisons. I don't think I should even think about that. And, I mean, we're threatening another Necro, which will win after that's been pinged once. So that looks pretty good. Out here, place her down on the bottom, and I've finally got those Sleep Moratoriums. He's got a Damning Curse. That's okay, because I've got another Nuru. I want to keep on making him use those. Probably not Sleep Moratorium yet. I think I actually don't use the Nuru. And now I can threaten. Necrogeddon, Restless Bones, which is scary as hell. Oh, no ID's a smart include. I think sacrifice the Unbind for Scrolls. I know I could kill that, but I think Nuru will be a good distraction this turn, and next turn I can Necrogeddon Restless Bones and just win. Every time he plays a no ID, I start getting scared that he's gonna just lop off my entire freaking board. Well, that doesn't work anymore. I do this and see what we get. Not great. I think just solo Restless Bones, I guess. Seems like a decent play. Yeah, that should be good. I'm not super worried about this. I'm still threatening Necrogeddon, Restless Bones. I now have another creature out. We're at the same amount of resources, actually, too. Those no IDs I've been putting in work, but he can't do that anymore, so... I guess he'd unbind this next, or... Cool, and that should just be game. That's still game. Oh, no, it's not. Let's take a risk. So I could Necrogeddon and put that down to 1 health. I think that's a good call. Let's Necrogeddon and put that down to 1 health. And I've got an Irva, I've got a Necrogeddon, I've got a Sleep Moratorium, which I can use to ramp up. So this should be good. He's got a big-ass hand, though. I'm surprised he hasn't Quaked yet. Probably wants to Quake next turn, I'm guessing. And there are no 1-cost... There's only 2 1-cost spells in the deck, so it's impossible if I get greedy and decide to Sleep Moratorium this turn. For that to not work out. Let's try a Sleep Moratorium. Yes! I wanted this really bad because I'm a BMS player. Let's do that. You two down, move you up. Necrogeddon. And GG. So that is my late game Undead deck. I hope you guys try it out. I hope you learned something from this video, and I'll see you guys next time.